The Slam Eagle, and its U.S. counterparts could therefore only hope to mitigate a ruinous North Korean bombardment over time, not eliminate the threat from the onset. No one should delude themselves into thinking a preemptive strike, or a rapid counter-strike, would contain the loss of life to an acceptable level. That doesn't make the F-15K's role any less vital. Indeed, should the worst come to pass, thousands of lives in South Korea and perhaps even on U.S. soil would be affected by how quickly the North Korean batteries could be silenced. On September 13, 2017, the Republic of Korea Air Force, ROKAF, test-fired a Taurus cruise missile in response to a North Korean ballistic missile test. In this video, you can see as an F-15K launched a boxy weapon, which plunges straight through the roof of a practice target, penetrating into the ground below before its main warhead detonates. For decades, the South Korean military has had to prepare for a conflict in which its cities, especially the capital of Seoul, would be on the receiving end of a North Korean artillery, chemical weapons and ballistic missiles. Now, such an onslaught might potentially include nuclear warheads. Though such a scenario must be avoided at all costs, should it occur, it would be vital for South Korean and U.S. forces to destroy these heavily fortified missile and artillery sites as swiftly as possible. What a war between America and China would look like. That's the mission assigned to the 60 F-15K Slam Eagles in the Republic of Korea Air Force. Based on the F-15E Strike Eagle fighter bomber in U.S. Air Force, the Slam Eagles have souped-up sensors and electronic warfare systems, and now are loaded with bunker-busting cruise missiles to blast open North Korean missile silos. Those weapons could also be employed in an attempt to decapitate North Korean leadership in a fortified bunker, a point the South Korean military surely hoped to illustrate when it released the video. What a war between NATO and Russia would look like. South Korea's Slam Eagle is the Strike Eagle is a fighter bomber variant of the F-15 Eagle, loaded with extra weapons pylons, fuel tanks and sensors at the cost of modestly decreased thrust-to-weight ratio and maneuverability. The 2C jets can still sprint at 2.5 times the speed of sound, and can lug an extraordinary 23,000 pounds of weapons, nearly 3 times the bomb load of a strategic bomber in World War II. On the downside, the large, twin-engine F-15 is much more expensive to operate than, say, a single-engine F-16, though the additional turbofan does contribute to a lower accident rate. What a war between China and Japan would look like. South Korea chose to procure 40 F-15Ks in 2002 for $4.2 billion as the first part of a 3-phase FX program to modernize its jet fighter force, beating out the Eurofighter Typhoon, the French Rafale and an earlier variant of the Su-35. Nearly 40% of the components were built by Korean firms, including fuselage, wings, and much of the avionics, then were assembled by Boeing in St. Louis, Missouri. Because the new Slam Eagles came more than a decade after the F-15E entered service, they could be outfitted at the outset with then new technologies including flat-screen displays in the cockpit that are compatible with night vision goggles, and a joint helmet-mounted cueing system permitting a pilot to acquire aerial targets for short-range AIM-9X missiles merely by pointing his or her head at them. The Slam Eagle was also one of the first variants of the F-15 to trade out the original F-100 engines for F-110 turbofans which could generate roughly 10% more thrust. You can see the difference in the engine nozzles here. In 2008 Seoul ordered a second batch of 21 F-15Ks for Phase 2 of the FX program to replace the F-5B Freedom fighters it was retiring. The order included one extra aircraft to fill in for an F-15K which fatally crashed in 2006 when its crew passed out performing a high-G maneuver. These planes featured Sniper XR targeting pods, and reverted to F-100 PW-229 engines to benefit from parts commonality with the engines on Korea's KF-16 fighters.